Welcome back to this episode of Humanitarian Love that Pauline and I are hosting every week. Welcome, Pauline.
Thank you, Estelle. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So, the topic that we picked out for you today is the topic of self love. And I feel like in the humanitarian world, we talk a lot about this. Yet, I'm wanting to talk about it from maybe a different perspective that we can somehow highlight today. So, the topic that I really want to explore about is um, oftentimes there's the myth that self-love means egoism or self-love means we're not caring about others. So that myth, I think we could clarify. The other one is what is actually self-love, and many times I think we interpreted it being like taking care of ourselves. And I really want to debunk that as well. I mean, taking care of is one aspect of it, but that's not it. According to my experience, anyway. This is what I would love for us to talk about, and the other one obviously is why lacking of it is a problem in seeking love, right? So this is essentially the topic. So let's start. Maybe that was the classic definition, or rather a definition that you find helpful, Pauline, and I would love to share my experience, and then we go from there. What would you consider self-love?
For me, self-love is pretty straightforward, is how you view yourself, how you see yourself, and how you treat yourself. So that includes what you started to mention that is more the self-care, that maybe is the first thing that comes to mind if we are not used too much like, oh, self-love, like self-care, like a nice bubble bath. And this is part of it, I believe, but I think it's much bigger than that. And so maybe we go more
Yeah.
into the detail. But so for me, it's really, how you see yourself, seeing yourself with love and treating yourself with love. That can go in ways.
Amazing. Yes. So for me, I would say self-love is accepting yourself without any conditions. And I find it so challenging as well to do that, but in the end, I think this is what it comes down to, accepting who you are currently, with or without success, whatever the thing that you're having in your life, whatever the thing that's happening, you are able to accept you and love you in whatever stage of your life. This is for me self-love. So in other words, it's more focused on you being rather than you having or doing. So this is how I would say it. So whenever I talk to my clients about it, oftentimes the argument I get, and I'm sure Pauline, you relate to this as well, is like, oh, you are all wanting us to become this egoistic people who don't care about others and just focus on ourselves and narcissistic and all kinds of stuff, right? So what would you answer to that argument?
Yeah, I've had it like not so frequently, but sometimes when I encourage people to be really loving and accepting of
Mm,
themselves, they can be indeed this like hierarchy, like taking care, like either or. So it means that if I take care of
yeah.
myself, it means I don't take as much care as the other, or yeah, putting my and this is like another well, no, maybe I stay there and I will mention the other points later, but yes, indeed, this idea that self-love is selfishness, like self-centered.
Yeah,
Yeah. and,
exactly.
and my answer to that is like absolutely not, because you need, the more you take care of yourself, the more you keep your energy, and you also show, you embody, you model for other, like it's not either or, like there's enough love for everybody. It's not like you have to divide. And
Yes, exactly.
the more you're at peace and loving with yourself, the more you're going to be at peace and loving with others. Otherwise, resentment is a big risk. um, and I think part a big part for me of self-love, and I think it's interesting for humanitarian, is setting boundaries, is knowing your boundaries, setting and enforcing your boundaries, your limits, when you are
Yeah.
saying no.
Yes.
And it's very hard when you have challenges around self-love, around self-esteem, around self-worth, to say no. And
Yeah.
this is like saying no to others, in fact, can be saying yes to yourself and can be healthy
Yeah.
for you and can be healthy for others. But it's a big struggle for most of us, indeed.
Yes, exactly. And the way that I would also say it is that self-love, if you don't have self-love, you are actually being egoistic. This is how I want to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
And and the reason is very simple, at least in my head, and let me try to explain it and see if it lands. So basically, when we are believing that we're selfish, we're egoistic, what we're really meaning that we don't want to be getting ahead at the at someone else's expense, or meaning making problems or harm for other people. So egoistic really means is when we make other people suffer at us being better or having some type of advantage, right? This is egoistic. And essentially, when we're lacking self love, what we tend to do is we tend to absorb not only our own resources but other people's as well, and therefore we're actually making harm. And one of the ways that, like, there could be many examples to look at it, but one of the ways that I've seen oftentimes in the workplace is that if we're not really loving ourselves and being generous and kind to ourselves, we tend to be very angry or emotional and trying to get it out to other people, or even having this passive aggressiveness of, well, you should know better, or you should have done this better, or whatever the way that we show up is actually when we're lacking that self love. And because we are lacking that, we don't have any patience, we don't have any understanding for other people. And that's actually, in my head, is egoistic, when we are not only harming ourselves in that moment, we're also harming other people, or influencing other people and triggering something in other people as well, especially if we're in very managerial roles. This could influence so much the atmosphere, the environment, the working place, and all of this. So that's why I would argue that self-love is actually selfless, or how should I say, self love is actually not egoistic, and not having it is egoistic, if it makes
Mhm.
sense. I hope that I was able to explain it, but if you need more explanation, you let me know. But this is how I have really found this to be true, is that if I'm lacking that love, then it means that I am not able to show up in the workplace the way that I want to, and therefore I may trigger things and emotions in other people. Um, I hope that, Pauline, you can hear me. I know that you said your internet might be a bit weak. Um, hello, hello. Sorry, everyone. We are trying our best with our internet. Yes, you're
I'm back.
back.
Sorry. Yes.
No problem. So anyway, you gave me time to explain things about the egoistic selfishness versus self-love. So maybe what we could turn to talk about as well is the next topic of why we believe that self-love is important in seeking love relationships, right? And why it could be a problematic if we don't have it. What would you say to that, Pauline?
Yeah, well, self love or a limited sense of self worth, for me,
Mm,
is probably the number one block in creating healthy, loving relationships. And I would say that most of us struggle with that. And for some people, it's very obvious. Like some people say, like, I don't like being with myself. I'm judging myself a lot. I don't love myself. So few people would actually be aware of that. And for most of us, other people, it's much more subtle. And it shows up when you look at who you attract as partner or who you allow in your life as partner. So if you allow
yeah,
people who are not as committed as you want, not as available as you want, or not treating you the way you want, and if you're, I choose the word carefully, if you're allowing these people, you keep choosing these people, this might be a sign that there is some work that can be done to reconnect with your sense of worth. and
Yeah.
also the way you show up in the relationship beyond who you choose.
Yeah.
How you show up in the relationship, if you have a hard time connecting to your own needs, if you have a hard time expressing them, if you over adapt, over give, over accommodate, lose your sense of balance in the relationship,
Yes, that's a
this
big
is
one.
probably a sense of self-love. So you can see how it can impact the
Yeah.
relationship. And here I'm making the link with the humanitarian world, where we are, doers, achievers, over giving, over accommodating is supposed to be our nature, right?
Yes.
So this is where it's interesting to look at this question in this sector, because yeah, sometimes the relationship with partner can be the same as the relationship with work. That you lose your sense of balance, you forget about your own needs because you place your partner needs or your organization or your missions needs before your own, and then it can create,
Yes.
well, yes, unhappiness, burnout, uh, yeah, resentments, yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. So one other thing maybe I can add to that is that whenever we're not feeling this love for ourselves and accepting ourselves, I think what tends to happen is we tend to want to find that in someone else, right? So that's essentially, I think you are saying in different ways, and I'm trying to say it another way, but essentially that's it. In other words, we are trying to find whatever we're lacking in someone else. But the problem starts is other people can't really give what we are not generating ourselves, and that's as scary, but also as rewarding because that means that you are in charge of generating that love within yourself. And you don't need to be seeking it from someone else to give it to you or to fill you with, right? So, in some ways. Now, whenever I say this, there might be a question mark of, well, why else would we find a love relationship if we don't seek love or if we don't want to get love? And that's a great question. What we are advocating for is that you are already feeling that within yourself, you're generating that within yourself, and then you're showing up in a loving relationship where you can just make the, I don't know, uh, adding to what you already have and not going to a relationship. I don't want to use the word empty, but this is what's coming up currently, meaning that you don't have that within you and you're trying to fill it with someone else's help, and then that creates a lot of the time codependent relationships, right? Codependent in a very negative sense, because we also may want to choose to be in a codependent relationship however way you want to define it.
Mhm.
But the one that I'm thinking about is where you are believing that you can't live without this love, or you can't live without this person, or you can't really be happy without, and therefore you start accommodating and being too flexible and forgetting about yourself and all the things that Pauline mentioned. That's what's going to happen. And that's what we're trying to help you avoid, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's quite interesting with the way the conversation is going, because yes, we're approaching it the same issue with maybe different words,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's particularly relevant again with the line of work, the humanitarian work, because when you say this place of emptiness, like I would call place of like looking for a place of lack, and the idea of
Mm,
worthiness and kind of many relationship, and I work with people who are not in this sector, is basically the subtitle is prove me that I'm worthy, prove me that I'm lovable through your actions, through
yes.
what you give to me. And this is also sometimes what we do with the work is prove me that I'm
Yeah.
valuable because I'm doing this job, because I'm this title, because I'm doing all these great achievements. And this is where I think it's interesting to look at where do you get your worth from, and
Yeah.
remembering that we are all worthy, that we all have this human worthiness, worth, right? That has nothing to do with what we do. And then there's like achievements. But sometimes I see many people, many women who are very independent, and sometimes always this chase of like, I need to prove, I need to do more, 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 more,
Yeah.
more. When in fact, of course, you can do if you want, but don't confuse both. Find, like, there is work to be find to do, to find this inner balance, this inner worthiness that has nothing to do with you doing, right?
Yes, exactly. I love that. And the other thing that I think you mentioned several times, and I just want to highlight, is that the pattern of thinking and pattern of beliefs are in whether we are showing up in work or in relationship may have similar patterns, right? So like many coaches say, I'm sure Pauline, you heard this, is whatever we do in one area, we tend to do in other areas as well. It's not like we tend to be, I don't know, great in one and sucking at everything else, even though sometimes it does happen. So that's why the pattern that we want to really bring your attention to is how you are showing up in the workplace currently. And you may be also arguing with yourself saying that, well, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. And that's probably also the element of what Pauline was mentioning as to how you might not be valuing, or you might not be feeling that worthy and trying to prove, and therefore you are believing that you can only do one thing and not anything else. Or it might be leading you to doing things that in the end you don't really like doing, right? But because you want to be in this proving energy or chasing energy, that leads to succeeding maybe in one thing and not really in others. So I think we've covered that, why it could be a problematic not having that self love and recognizing your self worth. So the topic that everyone is always interested, obviously, is, well, if it's not really taking care of ourselves, or if it's not fully this, then what are we going to do about it, right? Because I've heard many people say to me is that, well, I'm taking care of myself well. I'm doing these things during my vacation or R&Rs, and that's a bit like the belief of I can only do things well when I'm resting, which may not necessarily be the pattern of thinking that we're encouraging, because that still compartmentalize your life and say you can only do things here and not here. But we really want you to be looking at your life holistically as to how you can do this on a regular basis, how you can balance your life on a regular basis, whether you're on vacation or in work mode. So, what would you say, Pauline, people can do to grow that love within?
Okay, many different things that are available to most people. First is for humanitarian workers, starting to look at, yeah, who you are, connecting with yourself, like have a bit of inquiry of who you are beside the work. Because I want to mention also this point that we associate a lot with our work, with our job, with our organization. Sometimes we can lose ourselves. So it can be the moment, it can be the opportunity to say, okay, pause. Beside being, an associate or officer or whatever political analysis, okay, who am I? What are my values? What are my qualities? And have an inquiry about what you love about yourself. So this is a very simple question that I ask everybody, what do I love about myself? Asking yourself, and it can be your qualities, it can be your physical features, and starting to look at this. So this is a very simple question that everybody can ask themselves and start be curious about this, not taking it for granted, or yeah, just a simple question. This is number one. Number two, the idea of this inherent worthiness that we all have as human, as from when we are born as baby until now, that our worth is not defined by the work we do. Sometimes we believe it, but no. Have a great job and saving life, but no, like we are worthy before that. And even if we get, out of the job, if we leave the job. Yeah, and another thing is really starting to connect with your feelings and with your needs. And this, I mentioned boundaries at the beginning, and I think it's very important. Not only taking care of yourself with a yoga retreat or a bubble bath or a nice glass of wine. This is beautiful, and you want to do that as well. But also learning to say no to your manager when you're burnout, and when people ask you to do something, like start to like, no, like I cannot now. I need to nourish myself. My need is to take care of myself first and foremost before I can go back and give to others. So I think especially for humanitarian, this is a big one. Yes, the differentiating yourself from the work and your value from the work, and then starting to set boundaries to not in a selfish way, and to come back to what we are saying at the beginning, but if you think in terms of energy, it's like a boundaries is like a fence of self-love and keeping your energy, and not to keep it selfishly, but to be functioning and so that you can serve others and work properly when you are restored. And we tend to forget this often and
Yeah.
to burn out. Yeah, I might have other points coming up. I don't know if you want to
Okay.
add to
Yeah.
that already.
Exactly. So I think the other one that I really encourage people to do, and maybe also this is something that I've done a lot in my own life, so that's why it has been helpful, is to be really looking at how you can accept whatever the part that you're especially not liking about yourself, right? Pauline mentioned about your opinion about yourself, and I really encourage everyone to look at what are the things that you believe you're not good at, you know, you can't do it, or you're not supposed to, or whatever the things that you are limiting yourself or you are really rejecting. And the way that you know how you might be rejecting is you tend to judge a lot, right? You tend to judge other people. This is also how you notice that whenever you're judging other people is essentially you are judging something about yourself as well. So that's why whatever you are judging about someone else, like, oh, this boss sucks, or this colleague is not the way I want them to be, or whatever it is, that these are the elements of how we are trying to refuse and reject someone else. So look at yourself and how you might be doing that, and how you might try to accept that. And this is, for me, has been the most difficult yet also rewarding part of my journey. I think I told you as well that I tend to reject pretty much everything about myself at some point. And I've gone through that journey. But whenever I have done it, I have experienced a deep sense of calmness. Like the sense of I've arrived, or sense of I'm here, right? Or sense of I belong, or sense of this is who I am. And that had to happen only after accepting it and not before. It felt like as if I had lots of noise around me. And as soon as I cleared those noises, and then it's like, oh, it's me now,
Mm,
right? So that's why I really want people to realize that you can do that, whether you are, successful in whatever you do, or you're not successful in whatever you do, whatever the stage you're in, the life you're in, accepting of who you are, and also the physical aspects, the body and everything. So this is, I think, the highest priority, I would say, to experience love. And then once you do that, you also realize that there are lots of things no need to fight for or chase after or prove. And this is, I think, something that you will realize on your own. Like you will have this sense of, if I'm not supposed to do this and this, if I'm not supposed to be this perfect human being, if I'm not supposed to be working 24/7, or if I'm not supposed to be this hero humanitarian, then I can just be who I am and worthy no matter what, right? So I think these are the realizations that I really truly hope everyone experiences. And it might happen that sometimes we forget that. And especially we may forget it in difficult situations, or we may forget when someone told something to us and then we interpreted it, internalized it, right? So that's why it's important that you practice it, because this is another set of opinions about yourself that you may not be familiar with or you are not used to it. So that's why whatever the story you've been telling up until now, you need to balance it out with other stories of you, who you are, and your worthiness, no matter what.
mm.
Anything coming up, Pauline, in this
Yeah,
regard?
well, I want to, yeah, just to confirm absolutely what you mentioned. Like for me, I talk about loving all parts of you, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's easy to love yourself when everything is nice, when the sun is shining, you're in a good mood. But when things are hard, or when you
Yes.
notice your self discourse, your inner talk, most
Yes.
of us have a very very critical inner talk. So this is yeah, starting to see, um, yeah, how you talk to yourself. This is a way out, and softening and moderating the way you're judging yourself, the pressure you're putting on yourself,
Yeah.
and start to also love this inner critic, like to not judge yourself for judging yourself,
Yeah.
huh? And but
Which we do
starting to,
often.
yeah, we exactly, like, oh my god, if we start raising our awareness around our thoughts, the first thing we're going to see is like negative ones. It's like, oh my god, I'm talking this way to myself. I would never talk to a friend or to a loving person this way. So I think it's important to do that work, to start noticing like what's happening inside of us, how we talk to ourselves, about ourselves. um, but yeah, loving our inner critic, loving our shyness, loving our part that is afraid, starting to love all these parts of us, and loving ourselves in our full, range of the humanness. And not only
Yeah.
loving the fierce, courageous, kind person that we can be at times, but sometimes, yeah, sometimes we can be petty, we can be angry, we can be jealous, and we want to also accept that part. Maybe not want to
Yes.
give it all the space, but also recognize, well, I'm a human. Give yourself some grace, and like, yeah, accepting that you still.
Yes. Exactly. And maybe one thing that just to highlight is that I know that whenever we're feeling shame, whenever we're feeling guilt, maybe it's difficult to accept ourselves, right? Because we tend to be these people who say, well, I'm in better place than others. Like we often compare ourselves to people who are suffering, who've gone through wars and conflicts and all of this, and we tend to say things like, "Well, I'm in a better situation or position than them, therefore I'm supposed to be this human who does all the things, or this human who has no feelings, or who can, push the feelings away and then function in the moment, right?" So I know that we tend to do that, but ask yourself also how useful that is, right? Because no matter what the situation is around us, you are still human and you can love yourself and also love those people who are suffering. And you don't need to undermine yourself or undermine what you're feeling in order to be helpful for others. You can feel whatever the thing happening for you, the shame, the guilt, whatever it is, and you still experience loving yourself and showing up for other people. So that's why I just want just to warn, I guess, that let's not use other people's suffering against ourselves by saying, well, I can't really do this because I need to be there for others, or I can't really do this now. Because if we get into that pattern of thinking, again, we will likely to postpone a lot of the things into the future, which we may never really come to actually attend. So that's why let's not get into that thinking pattern of not now, but rather it is now. Whatever the thing going on, it is now. It's the time. You can love yourself. You can also be experiencing all of those emotions and showing up for other people. And it's actually a human way to do rather than numbing ourselves and then believing that we will take care of it later, because later may be also late. So that's why let's not do that. And I feel like, I just want to preach that the high time is to love whoever the person you are now and then still show up for other people the way you want to. Okay, anything last words that we haven't covered, we forgot, Colleen?
For me, that's good. No, I think we touch on the most important points. Yeah, would love to hear
Yes,
from the audience if you have any comments or reflection about those topics, whether it is worthiness, boundaries, loving all parts of you, or yeah, all these points.
exactly. And maybe last thing that I think I forgot to mention that's just important is that we often also believe that it's hard not to judge ourselves. It's hard not to judge other people in those situations, but actually it's harder to love. So if you are feeling like you can't stop judging or whatever, let's replace it with love and see what happens. Because the love tends to have this, I don't know, generosity and freedom behind it, and judgment has a lot of constraints and rolling of different heaviness afterwards after judging. So if you don't want to burden yourself with judgment of yourself and of others and not accepting, let's try replacing it with love and see what happens. I know it's probably not something you are used to, but it always takes a practice. So let's start practicing now and see what happens. And if you're having difficulty doing any of the things, you let us know. We will be happy to coach you around it and you'll be good to go. Okay. Thank you so much, Pauline. It was another amazing conversation.
Thank you.
And we hope that you enjoyed listening to us, watching us as much as we are doing. So we'll be in touch next week. Until then, stay well, stay loving of yourself, and see you next Tuesday.